My 32M fiancé, 29F, got breast enhancement surgery and I am no longer attracted to her. As the title says, my girlfriend and fiancé of 2.5 years recently got breast enhancement surgery. She'd been saying she wanted to do it ever since we first began dating, and while I expressed to her I didn't think it was necessary, I loved the way she looked before. I always said I would support whatever decision she made because it is her body and she's the one who has to live in it. About a year ago her mother died after a long battle with cancer in which she actually went into remission after a double mastectomy, but then the cancer eventually came back and metastasized to her pancreas. It was a horribly painful and unpleasant experience for everyone in her family. I had met my girlfriend after her mom went into remission and after the surgery, so I wasn't there with her for the first battle, which from what I've heard was very traumatic and painful in its own way. When her mother passed she inherited a fairly large sum of money, nothing crazy but enough to put a down payment on a house and finally pay for the surgery she wanted. When she told me she had made the appointment to meet with a plastic surgeon I was supportive, but again reinforced that I loved the way she looked now and suggested that maybe her desire to do this now was connected to her grief with her mother passing. She pretty much dismissed that notion since she said she'd wanted to get implants since she was in high school before her mom ever had cancer or the mastectomy. Fair enough. Fast forward about 6 months ago to the surgery and it goes off without a hitch. Because she was recovering for about a month or so I didn't really see the finished product right away, and then when I did they were much bigger than I had expected. She told me that there was still swelling and that would go down and it would look more natural. And the swelling did go down, but they've never really looked natural to me. Maybe because I was just so accustomed to the way they looked before the surgery that I am having trouble seeing them any other way. For the past few months, our sex life was been okay, but it definitely has dwindled a bit. We couldn't really have sex while she was recovering, and after she was feeling up to we overcompensated a bit by having lots of sex, but it was still before I had an idea what they looked like, since when we had sex she would still be in a sports bra and or baggy t-shirt that stayed on during. And I was very cautious not to grab at them or anything since they were still tender for so long after. Eventually she completely recovered and immediately I wasn't thrilled, but I lied and said I thought they looked great. Thing is I don't hate them or anything. The part where I started losing attraction to her has been that since she got the surgery she gets a lot more attention from random strangers. Which I've never minded. She got attention from strangers in the past too. She's a beautiful woman now and before. But since the surgery she seems so much more receptive to the attention that it's just become a total turn off for me. I didn't initially bring it up because I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, and even if I wasn't it would likely be regarded that way and dismissed either way. But eventually I started to make little comments here and there when she would flirt back with the delivery guy or whatever. Nothing terrible, but like, not sure he needs a tip after all or something. She got annoyed and eventually I did bring up my discomfort and she did what I assumed she would, which was accusing me of being paranoid and reading into things and saying that what I thought was happening was not. And then a couple of weeks ago I found out that while out with her girlfriend she was convinced to enter a wet t-shirt contest. A friend of mine happened to be at the bar they were at and just sent me a text telling me how great my girlfriend's tits looked. He was joking and later said he framed it that way because he was uncomfortable letting me know but knew he needed to let me know in case I wasn't aware. When I confronted her about it she didn't understand why I was upset, which is just symptomatic of this entire personality change she seems to have undergone since the procedure. I tried to explain that if she had told me that was happening I probably would have been fine, but the secrecy and just her general dismissiveness of my concerns and enjoying the extra attention was hurtful. She seemed to think that because she won the wet t-shirt contest I should just be okay with it and that I am lucky to have her. This simply isn't the person I fell in love with. I know I might be overreacting a bit, but I didn't love how the surgery turned out to begin with, and now this entire personality shift has been jarring enough to make me lose interest in being intimate with her at all. For the past 2 weeks we've only had sex 2 times and I've even had to reject her advances. I tried to be as nice as possible, but when I tell her I am not in the mood now she gets very angry and frustrated and kind of throws mini tantrums, also very new, like she thinks she's doing me a favor by even wanting to have sex with me and I am now somehow ungrateful. I've had some of my friends, male and female alike, mimic this kind of sentiment when I've tried to discuss it, hence bringing it to Reddit. I believe the person I fell in love with is still in there somewhere. But I might just be kidding myself. I am at the point where I want to suggest couples counseling, but the one time I remotely touched on the subject she was not receptive to the idea. I don't know what else to do, though. She's like a completely different person now. And I don't know that I like that person very much. Update. First, I want to thank everyone for their helpful and reassuring insight. After the post I was still uncertain as to what to do. I didn't want to spring anything on her as I felt from her perspective it might seem like my frustrations and concerns were coming out of nowhere unless she first provoked something, and I didn't want to bring up the past after as much time had already gone by because it felt petty of me to do so. I guess what I didn't realize at the time is I had become pretty distant and terse with her, which she brought up pretty quickly, as well as the fact that I was no longer initiating sex with her and completely unreceptive to any advances she made. I told her flat out that I felt her personality had completely changed and I was having a lot of second thoughts about the relationship. She got very upset and asked me why I'd not mentioned anything. I told her that I had tried to multiple times and she was completely dismissive of it and accusing me of being jealous or paranoid. I asked her when have I ever been either of those things throughout our relationship, and she had to admit that I have never been a jealous or paranoid person in the past. While she admitted that, she still said that she felt her personality was still the same and that while she may not know the reason for my perception, it was still wrong. She apologized for accusing me of being jealous but said I'm wrong. It was weird because it felt like it suddenly got turned on me and that it was somehow all on me. I was pretty stunned and felt like again she was being dismissive of my point of view. She said she didn't know what else to say. We agreed to put a pin in it for the night as I was kind of speechless and talking to her felt a bit like talking to a wall anyhow. That night she tried to initiate again and I said no and kind of snapped at her. I was quite flummoxed and said something to the effect, "Wow, you didn't hear a fucking word I said tonight, did you?" And apparently that broke her. She became so aggressive and hostile in a way I had never experienced before. She was hysterical. Screaming, thrashing, throwing the pillows and bedding around wildly. Knocked over a lamp that broke and that didn't slow her down. Then she started pushing me, telling me to get the fuck out and that she never wanted to see me again. At first I was resistant, pleading with her to calm down, but she was just getting more and more aggressive, so I just grabbed my wallet and keys and ran out to my car in my socks and boxers. I could still hear her slamming doors from inside of my car outside of our house. Her house. I just drove around all night thinking. I was shaking. I was genuinely scared. I was angry. I think I was in shock. I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't call a friend or my parents to go to their house, and I didn't want to show up in the middle of the night under these circumstances anyway. I just drove around all night and didn't sleep. I waited until about 8 a.m. to go back to the house, which was around when she would leave to work, but her car was still there, so I drove and got breakfast and coffee at a drive-thru, and when I came back an hour later she had eventually left. By this point I am feeling pretty calm. I go inside to grab some of my things and the entire living room is just a mess. Chairs tipped over, the coffee table completely shifted out of place, a plant ripped from a pot with dirt everywhere. You can tell she tried to clean it up a little but didn't get very far. I went to our bedroom where my phone and clothes were, and in the middle of the hallway on the way to the bedroom was a pile of all my things, including my phone, which had a broken screen. Fortunately, it was still functioning, so I called into work and spent the next 4 to 5 hours packing up a bunch of my stuff and loading it into my car. I also called a friend of mine and drove over to his house. He said I could crash with him for a bit while I figure out what to do next. Later that day I sent her text saying we should talk, and she responded there was nothing to talk about and that she thinks it would be better for both of us if I find somewhere else to stay for the time being. I explained that I already had done so and was staying with my friend, and then she went radio silent. She didn't respond to that or any follow-up texts I sent. About a week after all of this she sent me a text that simply said I need to figure out a time to come and pick up the rest of my things. I asked if she would be there so we could talk, and she said she had nothing to say to me and I should come get the rest of my things when she isn't there. So, I tried calling her and she didn't answer. I sent her a text asking her if she was just done with us then, and she said, "Yes, I thought I made that clear." Which maybe she did. I thought it was just an episode and we would at least talk. Later that week I went picked up the rest of my things and sent a text saying I left my keys on the counter. She said she was getting the locks changed anyway. I've known this woman for nearly 3 years and all of this along the way is new. She was always communicative and rarely hostile. She might pout or be passive-aggressive, but this felt like a full-blown tantrum. She was seething like a feral animal or something. She was completely unapologetic and calculatingly cold in a way she'd never been before. A few weeks later, after moving into my own apartment, I found out that she was already seeing someone new. I don't know if she started seeing him while we were together. It wouldn't shock me. At some point in the last year she stopped respecting me. And when I think back, there were probably signs before the surgery. Maybe even wanting to get the surgery. I don't know. The whole thing feels like such a blur. I think I may have been in denial for a while. Maybe I am just telling myself that now to feel better about it. I have not heard from her in weeks and I have not tried to contact her on my end either. I did receive a missed call from her in the middle of the night about a week ago, but there was no message or text and I didn't bother following up to see what she wanted. I'm not ready to speak with her again. I don't know when or if I'll ever be. The last couple of weeks with her and after the big blow-up were the worst days of my life. I've never felt so meaningless or disregarded. And she was the person who I trusted most in the world. At one point. Anyway, sorry this isn't a more positive update, but a few people had asked. I would have posted it sooner, but it's taken me a while to be comfortable talking about what happened. I still get upset thinking about it. I am hoping writing it out would help, but honestly I am just sad and upset again right now. Fortunately, I have my whole life ahead of me and I am fortunate in that I still have plenty going for me. I definitely feel more cynical now than I did before. Which sucks. Hoping that passes. My F28 husband, M30, is cheating on me with my school bully, F28. I just can't believe that he could fool me. His affair started 6 months ago. I could trace it 6 months back anyway. It could have been longer. There were no signs, no indications, no change of behavior, no change in the bedroom. I just found out by accident 3 weeks ago when his phone was on the nightstand. My husband was sleeping with my high school bully. I grew up in a small town and this woman bullied me severely in middle and high school. After graduation I did everything to find a job in a bigger city and moved, leaving all the hurtful memories. I worked hard for a year, found an apartment, bought a car and later started college. That's where I met my husband. We got married 2 years ago. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. He doesn't know yet. I will tell him eventually, don't worry. When I was in college my bully reached out to me after we bumped into each other in a party. She was new in town and was glad she saw a familiar face. She never acknowledged what she did and I never confronted her. I didn't want to open old wounds, however I wasn't going to befriend her, so I just rebuffed any attempt of reconnecting. She still moved in the same crowd as my husband and me. I never told my husband anything about her or our past. I wasn't even sure he knew her by name. 3 weeks ago, when my husband was in the shower, he got a notification on Messenger. I thought it was odd since he's not been active on Facebook or Messenger in ages. We know each other's codes, so I looked and there was her name and pictures telling him she missed his D***CK. I scrolled a few messages back and there was a full conversation. I felt sick and my eyes went blurry, so I just left the phone back where it was and acted like nothing. Over the next 2 weeks I looked in his phone whenever I could. I found out that my husband deleted Messenger when he didn't use it, except for the time he forgot. I started doing the same. Whenever he's sleeping, playing games or out for a run, I took his phone and installed Messenger. I could trace back their relationship 6 months. They've been sleeping together for 4. A lot of graphic description of what they want to do or have done to each other, but also a lot about me, although it was often one-sided. It's always my bully asking questions and trying to get answers about me, and my husband either reluctantly answering or outright telling her not to talk about me. But they've discussed my sex life and apparently I'm vanilla. To her constant questions about if he preferred me better, he answered that it's different and he doesn't want to compare. Discussions about me often ended in him getting irritated and stop answering for days. I have never cried my whole life combined compared to these last few weeks. I want to leave my husband, but I don't want to tell him why. I don't want to give him or my bully the satisfaction of knowing that they hurt me. I just want to ask for divorce and just tell him that I wasn't in love with him anymore and that I'm not happy in our marriage. It won't be lying, technically, because he's not the man I loved and I'm not happy in our marriage. I haven't told anyone what I found out, but I've told my mom that I want to leave my husband and stated the reasons above. She went berserk. This is so out of the blue and moronic, and the first question she asked was whether I was cheating on him or not. This was a preview to what probably everyone else will think and say, but honestly I would rather live with being the perpetrator than the victim this time. I just can't let that hurt me again, watch me suffer and enjoy it. I just can't. I know I'm being irrational right now, but please put yourself in my shoes and tell me what you would do in my stead. Update. I shouldn't have deleted my throwaway before writing an update with what I have decided to do. Thank you all for the support. I have read all of your replies and I have had them in consideration when making my decision on how to deal with my failed marriage. Here's some points before the update. Many said I needed a lawyer. I don't know about that. We don't have assets more than a joint account for monthly expenses and a joint saving account where both of us can do whatever withdrawals. I have already transferred my contribution to my private account. I'm not trying to protect my husband's and his AP or their reputation. I just don't want to give them, her, the satisfaction of knowing how much they've hurt me. I have read all of your comments and the majority thinks I have the wrong approach. I have decided to follow my guts. About terminating my pregnancy. I'm pro-choice of course, and I've chosen my baby even before I knew I was pregnant. I can't get rid of it only because I don't want to be with its father anymore. Me and my brothers are children to divorced parents and we turned out decent enough. About my bully being the stepmom. The chance is slim and not good enough to convince me to get rid of my baby. I already love it more than anything in the world. I have broken the news to my husband that I'm leaving him. I had already talked to my friends about it, and being unhappy in my marriage seemed good enough reason for them to support me. One of them offered me her place until I find my own. I got really emotional and hugged her and cried because that meant that I could leave my husband's apartment now. He was shocked when I told him. I don't think he took me seriously at first, but he asked me if he did something wrong. I told him that I'm simply not happy with him and I think I'm still too young to waste my life in an unhappy marriage. He said he had noticed me being distant this past month, but never would he have guessed I was unhappy with him. He begged me to tell him what's wrong because this can't be it. He believed me, however, when my friend came to take me with her. This was Thursday. He has been calling multiple times a day, but I haven't answered. He showed up this morning to my friend's house and begged me to have breakfast with him. I agreed. He looked like he hasn't slept or shaved since I asked for divorce. I told him that I was pregnant and that I'm keeping it, but he didn't have to be a part of its life if he didn't want to. His phone was on the table and he got a notification from Messenger. So he had forgotten to delete the app before meeting me. When I saw her name, I told him, "Oh, is that her name? You know, she used to bully me in school back when we both lived in town." He froze. "Oh, haven't I told you about her?" I told him everything she did and how it affected me. How she never apologized about anything. He was silent the whole time and just looked at me. I ended it with, "Be careful with her. I don't think she's changed much, to tell you the truth." He grabbed my arm and just watched my face like he wanted to see if I knew something. My plan is to buy a small apartment because that's all I can afford right now. A one-bedroom is enough until I have my baby and it's old enough to need its own room. I can upgrade later when I've saved more. I'm not leaving the city. I've spent my best years here and have the greatest memories. I have my friends around me and hopefully they will still be supporting me when the divorce is a fact. I have already filed for divorce, but he's probably going to ask for thinking period. I'm not in a hurry though. Everything will get better. For now I want to cry, try to get over him and heal and be there for my baby.